Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is Clay Bierman. In this video, I'm going to go over my first full month of solar production, which would be the month of January. I'm going to talk about it out here for a little bit, then I'm going to go back inside and show you the Enphase Enlighten monitoring system, which basically gives a bunch of data on what my system generated. And then I'm going to go over my solar journal that I'm updating monthly when I get my electric bill. Because on the electric bill, it obviously tells you how many kilowatt hours I've used, how many kilowatt hours I've sold back to the grid, and then the net usage that I'm billed for or credited for if I generated more than I used during that month. Let's get to the numbers, okay? The month of January, 31 days, gotta check my notes here. My system generated 371.3 kilowatt hours of electricity. Again, that's 371.3 kilowatt hours. Over 31 days, that averages out to 11.97 kilowatt hours per day. Now that's not what the system generated, that's just an average over 31 days. During the month of January, we got about 4 to 4.5, 5 days of pure sun. And on those days, the system generated about 38, 39 kilowatt hours of energy. But the other days, some days it generated only a couple, some days it generated 10. It just depended on the weather. As you can see today, the system's still producing energy. I think so far I've produced about 12 kilowatt hours. I'll have to check, but it's cloudy, but the system's still putting out energy. The excess kilowatt hours that I sold that weren't used by the home that were sold back to the grid was 177. Again, 177 kilowatt hours. During the month of January, $48.27 was either produced or saved, however you want to look at that number. I calculated that using a 13 cents per kilowatt hour cost. The reason I do 13 cents instead of the 12.8 cents that I've talked about before is that I decided to add in some of the taxes and fees that are associated with the cost. Now, if you average with the full taxes and fees, it comes out to 13.8 cents per kilowatt hour, but I'm just being conservative and saying just a flat 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And also in the month of January, my Chevy Volt used approximately 313 kilowatt hours of electricity to drive, essentially. So if you want to look at it, the system covered all of the electricity that I used to drive during the month of January, and that comes out to, I think, 1,000 and some miles driven on electricity in the month of January. So when I look at it that way, it's cool. I would say it was partially covered by the panels. Overall thoughts, my first month, it's great. I'm very pleased. The system kicks out when it's sunny. The system kicks out a ton of energy. The best days I've had so far, I think, were 41.9 kilowatt hours was generated. And if you times that by 30 days, if I got that much generated per 30 days, I would have over 1,200 kilowatt hours in a month, which is more than I've ever used. This is during the winter when my car is less efficient. It takes more energy to heat my home than it does to cool my home. Yada, 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 yada. Yeah, for the winter months and the weather that we've had, the system's done everything it's lived up to. I knew it wasn't going to produce enough electricity during the winter months to 100% offset my winter bills. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to do that in the spring and summer and fall months. So when we get more sunny days and there's the angle of the sun's better for the panels and the days are longer. Okay, I can't really think of anything else to talk about. Let's go take a look at my Enphase Enlighten monitoring system and look at my solar journal. Talk about it. Do a little pan of the wonderful winter weather. Winter this year really hasn't been that bad. We just got our first decent snow last weekend, but a lot of it's melted off or it didn't drift. But yeah, it's winter. Yay. I might go a little fast. This might be a little confusing to some people out there, but I'm just going by the data, so it's a very good overview of the realities of a solar system, a decent sized solar system. Again, it's an 8 kilowatt solar system, DC. Max output for AC is 5.9 kilowatts. Sunlight from the panels is DC, and then that's what the inverters are for. It changes the DC power to AC power, and that's what goes in your house and into the grid, because our grid is an AC power to grid, if you didn't know that. So when you pull up Enphase, it goes to your status page. Obviously system normal, see that there. That's today's date, updated 7 minutes ago. It usually updates about every 15 minutes when it's working properly. Latest power, so last 15 minutes, it's putting out 0.4 kilowatts. And then peak power at one point during the day, it was putting out 5 kilowatts of AC energy. So total production for today is 11.2 kilowatt hours. Yesterday, because it was a pure sunny day, 42.4 kilowatt hours, which is really good. It's amazing. And then this time last year didn't have the system, so 0. So let's go straight to the month. All right, that's this month. So let's talk about the month I talk about outside, which is January. So again, 371.3 kilowatt hours. I think that's what I said. Yep. And then on this graph here, it just shows on the left you have kilowatt hours, and then on the right is just the days of the month, and then it shows you each day. And then you kind of see what days were sunny and what days weren't. So like that, the 21st was pure sun. If you click on day, it actually gives you a little weather graph right here. So that's a moon, but there's no cloud, so it was clear. And then it says, yeah, 41. So 41 kilowatt hours. The first, February 1st, it was not clear. January 31st, clouds with snow. The system still put 5.9. January 30th, 9.4. Cloudy. So if it's cloudy, you're gonna produce around 10 or less, around there. If it's sunny, 20 or up is kind of the thing I'm going for here. So month of January, like I said, 371. I don't know why I changed it, 0.4, 0.3, whatever. Then over here you have currency equivalent, and I have the currency set for, like I said, 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So 48.3, which, yeah, 48.27 is what I said outside. And then what's cool is you can do year, you can do lifetime. So lifetime, the system's produced that much, 666.9 kilowatt hours, which equates to about $86.70. I'm happy with so far. And then custom setting. Now this is where it gets interesting. So when I did the video, the numbers outside, I went by the month of January, just the month of January, right? Unfortunately, your electric bills are not exactly the month. Like, they don't start, the billing period is not always the first of the month to the 30th, 31st, or 28th for February. So the billing cycle is always a little different. It's kind of weird. So this is where you can put in your custom range. Now, my billing cycle, the last bill I got, was from January 5th to February 2nd, which was 2 days ago. And why is that important? Well, in my solar journal, which I'll show you in a second, that's what I'm essentially going off of. For this billing period, so the system generated 450.4 kilowatt hours, equates to $58.50 roughly. And let's just take a look at my electric bill that I got. So this was interesting here. So I saw this, I'm like, holy cow, because even if my solar did offset all my electricity usage, I would still have the monthly service charge. So then I scrolled down and looked, and it was because we must have passed the threshold for the time you had to reach before they refunded your deposit. And I don't even remember making a deposit, but we bought this house in May of 2020, and apparently I put down a $312 deposit. So that's why the bill is 0, which is cool, good. We don't have an electric bill for the month of January, essentially. What I actually used for the month of January, as you can see here, billing summary, from January 5th to February 2nd, 29 days. So that was the kilowatt hours was my net kilowatt hours, 919. That is net. So the ones I use minus the kilowatt hours that I generated and sold back to the grid. And it shows you down at the bottom. It's right here, meter read details, okay? So usage, 1,096 kilowatt hours delivered, DLVD, and then the minus 177 kilowatt hours received. So 177 kilowatt hours is the amount that I overproduced that the house didn't need, that kicked back into the grid for this billing period. Why did you only sell back 177? I thought you said you generated 450.4. Well, I did. It's just the house and my car and everything that plugs in use the rest of that energy. And that 177 is just the amount that was overproduced that went back to the grid during certain times. Well, then you say, well, how come you're still being charged the bill if you overproduced? Well, it's because I overproduced when it was sunny outside and the system was just kicking it out a bunch of energy. When the sun has set, and at night when it gets cold and the heater's running all the time, I'm using a lot of energy and not producing anything. So yeah, that's how that works. Okay, so that's the billing period, 29 days. This is my usage during that billing period, essentially. Now let's go to my solar journal, okay? And I got some information up top, total cost after tax. Okay, so my cost per kilowatt hour 0.13, so this is what I'm using in my formulas, locking that in there, 13 cents. So I have January 2021 highlighted red, because that's the month we're talking about. So let's just go through each one of these. So that was my electric bill. Net kilowatt hours used from grid. So I bought 919 kilowatt hours from the grid. Solar power generated 450.4 kilowatt hours. Average per day. Over the 29 days, that averages about 15.53 kilowatt hours per day, which isn't bad for the month of January in northern Indiana. Access I put back in the grid, 177. Money produced or saved, however you want to look at that, $58.55. The electric, I'm resetting a trip meter every month on my volt to get the electric miles driven, 1,095, approximate kilowatt hours, number of miles driven divided by 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. Will give you roughly the kilowatt hours. You could say that my fuel was for my volt was provided by solar completely, or you could say it was partially. I'm going to say it's partially run by solar. When it was sunny outside, I had my car plugged in charging. It was still kicking out energy into the grid, so that means in my mind that my car was charging from the sun, which is really cool. Anyway, it helps. Everything helps, right? That's really it. And the point of this solar journal is like to get no shit, real data, no fluff, no like this is what I think is the system's doing, like this is what the system's putting out. These are the numbers, these are the hard facts. You know, hopefully, you know, May, June, July, August, September, the only bill I have for my electricity is the $15 service charge. If you're hooked to the grid, you're going to have a monthly service charge. That's always stays the same. But who knows? I don't know. We'll find out. So before I do my outro, I want to talk about this really quick. This is interesting. Oh, really interesting here. So this is today, right? 11.6 kilowatt hours. The sun did pop out, and that's where you see these spikes. And you can see for each little dot, the times down here, it's 15-minute increments, essentially. I don't know why I'm pointing with my finger. You guys can't see that. In 15 minutes, the system did not produce 5 kilowatt hours. It means it was, at that time, for that 15 minutes, was putting out 5 kilowatts of power, essentially. So if it would have done that for an hour, then it would put out 5 kilowatt hours. See what I mean? So, but that's not what I want to talk about. Let's go to, okay, so this is a great example of a full sunny day. I generated 42.4 kilowatt hours, which is really good. I'm really excited about that. You can see about 8 o'clock, 7:45, 8 o'clock, the sun comes up, it's starting to hit the panels are starting to put out a little energy, and then as the sun, you know, moves across the sky and becomes more direct and more powerful, it peaks out right there. Now, as you can see here, why doesn't it get stronger as the sun gets stronger? Well, because my system, that 5.9 that you see there, is the maximum output in alternating current, AC. It's an 8 kilowatt direct current system, that's from the sun, but the inverters, I'm sure there's some efficiency loss there. Entropy, there's always entropy. I don't know the calculation. 5.9 is the maximum energy power output in alternating current that the system's produced. So, and what that tells me is that the cold and not necessarily the angle of the sun are not really negatively affecting the power output of the panels. Which means I think in the summertime, I'm just going to have the longer day, so more sun, more hours of sunlight, and because the angle of the sun, the panels will get up to that 5.9 quicker, so that'll produce more energy. That tells me that the panels really aren't that affected by cold or the angle of the sun right now, which is good. If you stuck around this long, thank you. You're awesome. Well, that was really long. Well, hey, this has been Clay Bierman. It went longer than I hoped it would, but there's a lot of information to talk about. Give me a like, subscribe. I'm going to keep putting these videos out once a month, as long as I can. Giving you real world data on a real world northern Indiana solar system. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye.